To be honest, I don't even know what the color pink is. Isn't it like red mixed with blue or something? Is this pink? Sure doesn't look like it. Oh well, in case you live under a rock, this little thing is called Kirby, and I guess he's made of maximum pink. Kirby's been a thing for me longer than Mega Man, predating my knowledge of Mega Man's existence by many years. Like, I was watching Kirby Right Back At Ya at the same time I was watching Pokemon Diamond and Pearl growing up. And you know what? It's tough. I don't care what anyone says, this shit is tough. Anywho, before we get to the first game, there's always a question. How did we get here? Oh shit! 5 years after the release of the NES, a guy named Masahiro Sakurai joined HAL Laboratory, a video game company looking to create a game that anyone could enjoy for a system called the Game Boy, a handheld that came out 4 years after the NES. Yes, that Masahiro Sakurai, developer of the Smash Bros. Series, Masahiro Sakurai. Despite what he was able to come up with in the future, he had just two simple goals with the creation of this game: making a cute character everyone will love, and making a game that's accessible to beginners first and foremost. He came up with the character first, calling him Twinkle Popopo, the game itself being called Harukaze Popopo. The programming and creation of the game continued pretty smoothly until 1991, with the game being scheduled to release in December of that year. There was just one problem. Nobody was really interested. Seeing this, Sakurai and HAL Lab made an incredibly ballsy move and spoke directly to Shigeru Miyamoto himself. You may know him for such hits as, I don't know, the entire Super Mario series. Miyamoto was actually on board with the idea, saying that Nintendo could actually publish the games themselves if just some slight retooling was done. The team got 4 times the storage, jumping from 512 kilobits to 2 megabits. And if you think those are big numbers, think again. 2 megabits is just 0.25 of a single megabyte. If you take a picture using nothing but an iPhone camera, it comes out to around 5 to 8 megabytes depending on what's happening. So they were programming on 5% of a single iPhone picture. Despite that, Nintendo wanted them to add in an extra game mode, which they ended up doing. Finally, Nintendo requested that the team give the game and character a new name. They wanted a name that would appeal to American children as well, so Nintendo of Japan actually reached out to the branch over here in the US, who provided an abundance of names to pick from. They chose Kirby as they thought it was cute and funny to use such a husky name for a character with such a cute appearance. And also cause this guy named John Kirby, I guess. He's actually pretty important though, as he's the guy who helped Nintendo win a big lawsuit brought on by Universal, so he kinda solidified Nintendo as a brand over here in the States. After some quick touch-ups with the help of Nintendo of America, Hoshino Kabi was released in Japan on April 27, 1992, with Kirby's Dreamland releasing over here on August 2nd, 92, and everywhere else in December of that year. Having just looked at the first Mega Man game and thinking it pretty short with just 10 full stages, you'll be very shocked to know that this game only has 5, but they're all probably even more iconic, with the first being Green Greens. Something I like about a lot of games is that they mostly all start with upbeat grassy forest areas. I mean, Green Hill Zone has to be one of the most iconic first areas in gaming, and while Green Greens may not look the part yet, it definitely sounds like it, and that was intentional. The songs in this game were made with the intention of having kids hum along to them, according to the game's sole sound composer Jun Ishikawa, and it definitely worked. Actually, playing the game though, it's very simple. This is still a Game Boy game after all, so despite the name of the first stage being Green Greens, it's pretty not green. The stages are also really short in this game, so we go through a quick mini-boss and get to Wispy Woods, the only consistent Green Greens resident and first boss of the series. Since he's literally just a tree, it's not like he can move to attack, so he instead just drops apples and puffs wind to try and stop Kirby. Like Kirby, however, he only has 6 hit points, so it only takes a few quick rotations to get him out of the way and go on vacation. The next stage is Castle Laugh Out Loud Out Loud Out. It's the first appearance of the mic ability, but we only get to use it once here. This stage also has pretty generic enemies, much like the first Mega Man game, and looking at the actual art of the enemies, they remain generic, just with that cute Kirby 90s art style. There are some mainstays introduced here though, like the Broom Hatter and the glorious Waddlers themselves. Waddle Dee and Waddle Doo technically make their first appearances in Green Greens, but I figured I'd talk about them here while we're talking about enemies. A cool tidbit about them though is that they actually share the majority of their sprites, only changing the faces to distinguish them from one another. Some of these enemies are actually hella goofy looking though, and I was genuinely laughing at them while writing the script. Lololo serves as a mini-boss in the stage and also as a natural demonstration technique seen in many Kirby games. The game introduces mechanics to you in a mostly harmless environment in order to give you a chance to learn them. So, for example, with the first mini-boss, if you've never seen Kirby before, you might not know that you're supposed to inhale the bomb and spit them back at the boss to do damage, and here you're introduced to Lololo and Lalala's gimmick of retreating back into doors and coming out of a different one, which is immediately put into use as the fight with them is had after a few more quick screens. Overall, it's a pretty good stage, but I don't like it as much as Green Greens. The next area is Float Islands, and I do like this one. It's a tropical seaside area that just kind of spits enemies at you, but it's not enough to make you feel like you're living on the edge of death at every step. Something pretty funny I noticed is that Kirby doesn't have a swimming animation in this game, so he just kind of walks through the water. There's also this part where you eat some Japanese curry that was apparently too spicy for Kirby, and this cool animation of Kirby getting shot out of a whale hole. I think it's really cool that they put a cutscene like that in a Game Boy game. There's no mini-boss here, so instead you're thrown directly into the boss of the stage, Kabula, who's a big blimp thing. This is the first of many shoot-'em-up sections in the series, so it's pretty interesting to see that it all began here. Bubbly Clouds is the next stage, although I feel like this stage is more of a lesson on adjectives before nouns. This stage also includes a lot of enemies that become mainstays, and it's interesting to see how they evolve from the original game. They're all fundamentally the same as their current counterparts, so we can just go past them. This stage is heavily infested with Waddle Doos, which makes sense because the mini boss and final boss of the stage, Kracko Jr. and Kracko Proper, spit out Waddle Doos for us to use to attack. We'll come back to you later. There's also the first entrance to the Kirby secret here, where you can go into the moon and find a falling section full of free health and 1-ups. Kracko itself is a pretty easy pattern of flying around the room and shooting either Waddle Doos or beams in a circle, much like said enemy. We can actually abuse iframes here and it becomes pretty easy. The last stage is Mount Dedede, home to one of the other most iconic pieces of music from the Kirby franchises. It's a boss rush that includes little rehashes of the stages the boss is meant to be in, but the real star of the show is King Dedede himself. Dedede is hella stacked in this game. I mean, look how much health he has! The fight with him is pretty cool though. Like most of the enemies, Dedede's basic movements and mechanics were established here, but it's pretty hard for me to grasp his pattern. Normally, you might be able to tell what a boss is going to do by their lead-in animation, but Dedede just doesn't have any, so you gotta have quick reflexes. And that's the game! Kirby clobbers that there Dedede and just evicts him. Literally just evicts him. He steals Dedede's entire castle by doing a technique called inflation. Fun fact, you can actually do this in real life too. If you want to learn how to do it yourself, just go into Google and look up Kirby inflation. Kirby drops off all the food for the citizens of Dreamland to have, and if you wait around long enough, there's a menu for a secret mode called Extra Game, the extra mode we talked about Nintendo wanting earlier. It's basically the same as the original mode, but with some enemies replaced with other enemies with the exact same movements. The only real difference in extra mode is that everything does double damage, and some bosses either have slightly different or faster patterns. The only real notable change in boss pattern is Kracko Jr., who just decided to crank up to 11 for no reason. Kirby's Dreamland was a really good game though, and it was a pretty smooth start for the series. It was a huge success, selling about 1 million units in its first year, so naturally, they had to make a sequel for Nintendo's newest console. Wait, the NES? Really? Despite Kirby's Dreamland being a big success, HAL Labs was on the verge of bankruptcy and they needed some quick profits. Sakurai originally wanted to make the sequel on the NES, but ultimately had to settle on the NES because it would have taken too long to set up the dev environment, let alone develop the game. Sakurai thought the NES had a reputation of being for more veteran gamers, so he wanted to create the sequel with a new mindset. He wanted to make a game for both new and veteran players. To accommodate this desire, he came up with the copy ability system we have today, in which some enemies could be swallowed by Kirby to gain completely different abilities than that of Kirby's own. Since this is still an NES game though, there are no fun hats. Instead, Kirby becomes a peach color rather than his normal pink, an homage to where HAL Laboratory is actually based. With everything said and done, we managed to get 25 copy abilities for this game, with Sakurai saying that development was stressful for a lot of reasons and it really did a number on my stomach. But I think the end product holds its own against many of the other titles in the NES library. Immediately hopping in, we can see why. There's a whole cutscene that teaches you how to draw Kirby, but it goes away a little too fast to actually learn properly.
Oh shit.
The worlds also have some cool new cutscenes to introduce their themes too. Nice. This game keeps with the idea of having the first world be a grassy area, but now it's in full 256 color glory. The difference between this game and the last game was like night and day, but it makes sense because Kirby's Dreamland is like your average Game Boy game, and Kirby's Adventure is like an uber late NES game, so they had a good amount of techniques and graphic ideas to play with. Stuff that looks pretty cool in this fancy new CRT TV I got. This waterfall actually looks like a waterfall and not a bunch of blue pixels, for example. Under this waterfall, you can actually find one of the rarest copy abilities in the game, UFO. It's like Beam, but you can charge it and it shoots a star that just destroys enemies. This game also introduces a fun minigame at the end of each stage. You're supposed to press A at the right time to blast stuff up for a 1-up, but I think I only did it like once or twice in the run. Something cool about Vegetable Valley 2 is this screen with the Warp Star. Normally you're just supposed to hop in the star and move on to the next section, but if you want to soft lock yourself, you can actually remove the Warp Star and just keep going to find HAL Lab's signature. This is very important. I feel like this is a pretty well-known Easter egg in Kirby games, especially considering it comes up in like every Kirby game after Superstar Ultra in 2008, so it's definitely more recent, but it's cool that it actually started here. This game doesn't have mini-bosses for each stage, instead appearing sparsely throughout the early stages of the game, so it's pretty fun to blaze through with the right abilities. Kirby also has a swimming animation in this game, so that's cool. This really cool guy shows up in Vegetable Valley 4 and gives us a lollipop, and it makes us invincible, which is pretty cool. Getting to the end of the world is a boss fight, which is the formula most Kirby games follow after this. Vegetable Valley's boss is... Wait, Wispy Woods? Is that you? In full 256 colors? Wispy Woods is mostly the same as Kirby's Dreamland, although this time we have copy abilities to use, and it's just unfair! Look at this poor tree, he doesn't even stand a chance! The second world also kind of follows the standard from Kirby's Dreamland, taking place in a tropical setting pretty early on. Last time it was Float Islands, and this time it's... Oh, shit. One of my favorite copy abilities, Parasol, makes its first appearance here, but you can only really get it at the end of the stage, and by that point, you'll most likely have the superior sword ability, so there's kind of no point. In contrast to the title card, the areas in this game are surprisingly less tropical than I'd like. The first is mostly in the forest, and the second is in the desert. This game is also the first to include sub-games, little mini-games spread throughout the worlds. They're really here just to get 1-ups and actually serve to make the game easier for newer players. They're all quick and simple one-button minigames, and they're completely skippable if you wanted to. There's only 3 sub-games in this game, and they all follow an archetype that Sakurai highlighted in an interview. Press the button with the right timing, press the button first, and should you press the button or not, are the phrases Sakurai used to think of these little crumbs of gameplay. Ice Cream Island 3 is pretty fun. I feel like they added this whole water section just to show off the swooping Kirby animation they made, and wait a sec, that mask guy is back, but now he's evil! These are the Meta Knights, not to be confused with Meta Knight, the mask guy. They're pretty easy, and you can just suck and blow them away real quick. There's a cute clock mini boss in Area 4 that you can get Mike from, and it actually has 3 uses this time, it just doesn't have the cool wigs yet. The boss of this world is an artist. I think this is really cool. I kind of like the idea of artists drawing things and having them come to life. I think they made a movie about that or something. I think they bring this back for Kirby 64 as well, but I've never actually played that game, so I'm not too sure. World 3 is just called My Sets, and it's clear to see that Kirby definitely can't. He just can't. This one is a really big tower, but it's really cool to see that the world map and the stage layouts follow this theme, especially for an NES game. This is also the first world with these big switches. They're supposed to be secrets, but they're mostly secrets in the way you find them. They unlock extra places on the map like warp locations and sub-games, so you don't have to get them to beat the game, but you do if you want 100% it. This world is mostly okay. I like this section where you have to speed through the side of the tower, and if you go too far, you'll just die. There's another speed section shortly after, this time with Wheel though. A cool thing about Fireball and Wheel is that they stop damage from spikes, so it allows the devs to throw in cool sections like this. The best part though, you don't need the copy abilities to do it. You really can finish the game without using a single copy ability, which is pretty cool. This game also introduces the mechanic of some copy abilities affecting the world too, with Hammer and Stone being able to push down these pegs and unlock stuff. Overall, the areas in Butter Building are just okay. The boss is pretty cool though. They made like 4 Pokemon games out of this boss right here, and this is a cool duo fight like Lololo and La in Dreamland, with both the Sun and the Moon having their own health bars. This is the first fight I kinda started to struggle with, but eventually we got it. The next area is Grave Garden, and come on now. Something interesting about this game is that due to its somewhat rushed programming, there's actually slightly more glitches than in Kirby's Dreamland, so you're basically invincible during these in-betweens. Grape Garden is actually the least garden-like world in the game, unless you mean to tell me that grapes grow in the sky. Do they? Hey Siri, are grapes grown in the sky?
Would you like me to use ChatGPT to answer that?
No, bruh. Very early on is another UFO get chance, with this room being one of only 5 chances to get it in the entire game. The UFO enemies don't respawn if you go slightly off screen, so if you kill it like I did, you're basically like, hey, there's another one. Like this game is so polished for an NES game. Dude, Kirby has so many sprites. But like, when you run into a wall, Kirby runs into a wall. Like, he'll just squish. Which I think is cool. It is pretty cool. If you look at other NES games like, say, Mario 3, Big Mario is a total of 35 sprites, with only 31 being used in gameplay. Common Everyday Kirby has about 100, with all the copy abilities getting their own unique sprites as well. A really cool detail here is that to make it more distinguishable when Kirby had a copy ability equipped, Sakurai designed the sprites in a way that Kirby with a copy ability is slightly wider, so while normal Kirby has his arm visible thanks to the perspective of the game being played, when you have a copy ability, Kirby's arm is no longer visible, it's almost as if his cheeks are falling in the way. I thought that was pretty neat. If you look at the Spriters resource where I got these sprites, you can see just how many sprites there actually are in the game. And it's crazy to think about, especially considering they were just scavenging for space on the Game Boy cartridges. There's even cute sprites for Kirby being too short and stubby when climbing up these slopes, which Grave Garden is full of. Grave Garden is pretty chill in the enemy department as well, with you only having to face really 1 or 2 enemies at any given time, except for this case and a mini boss like this, but if you pay attention, it's not too hard either. Grave Garden also introduces more of the world affecting tidbits, with Fire or Crash being able to light this fuse and get us a 1-up. I also really like this entire level as a whole. It's an airship level, which really has nothing to do with a grapevine, but these propellers are moving faster than my brain, and they look pretty cool. The next stage follows it inside the airship, I think, and we finally get to see some grapes, although they're pretty huge. I especially like this part. We have to do this challenge with the wheel ability in time to get the switch, but I didn't do it, and I just forgot to go back. Kracko Jr. and Kracko Proper make a return here as the bosses, with a really cool jumping section to beat Kracko to the top. This time, Kracko shoots out these Starman enemies instead of Waddle Doos, who give out the high jump ability, something that's actually really useful to have against Kracko, as he's mostly out of reach to shoot the enemy back at him. This iteration of Kracko is a lot easier than the one on the Game Boy, despite having more attacks in its pattern. Oh man, Kirby just can't catch a break in these title cards. I mean, he lost his sunglasses, he got blown up, he lost his balloons, and now he's lost his food. Somebody save him. Yogurt Yard is nice. The areas start really open and gradually thin out as you progress, making us have to fight some enemies up close. I really like this room in the 3rd area where you have to use Parasol to get through some spikes, cause just like, look how enthused Kirby looks. I also really like the colors in the background of this world. It's kind of weird to think about, but I really like the way the green contrasts with the purple, and if you think about it, it kind of looks like a cityscape with odd buildings, and almost like there's some sort of spotlight highlighted them. It kind of reminds me of New York, but that wouldn't make much sense for a place called the Yogurt Yard though. If we zoom it out and actually look at the full map, it's supposed to be a mountainous fresco, whatever that means. Completely off topic, but with the introduction of the copy abilities, the programmers had a slight dilemma. If 2 copy ability enemies were sucked in at the same time, which ability did they provide? The first or the second? To counter this, they created Mix, a quick randomizer that gives the player any of the 25 abilities in the game. I also wanted to talk about this screen. It's a really quick reaction puzzle where you have to light the fuse with fire, then drop the ability and switch to high jump, and then land in the cannon before the fuse runs out. It took me a few tries because I didn't really know how to tackle it at first, but if you really try, it becomes easy. The boss of this world is pretty interesting too. It's a machine that spits out enemies at you while destroying the walls in a random pattern. What's interesting about this is that they somehow managed to create both infinitely generating terrain and a completely randomized pattern for destroying said terrain, which seems like it would be pretty hard, especially in the NES. You can't really die from damage here since you're always going to be behind the boss, so the challenge comes from trying not to get off screen, in which you die immediately. The 6th world is Orange Ocean. Are we sure that's water? It looks like someone needs water. Orange Ocean actually follows its theme pretty well, as most of the areas are either submerged in or have to do with water. The backgrounds are all really nice here too, and I really like the color choices they picked for this world. Like, the yellow contrasts to purple much like the green did, the red complements the pink, you get the gist of it. There's another level like the airship one in Grape Garden, but it's a lot slower paced, this time taking place on a pirate ship, I think. It's too big to be a sailboat. Orange Ocean is another world that's pretty relaxed on the enemies, instead having us go through and do some puzzles like this one to get a 1-up or this fuse puzzle for another switch. While I'm not too fond on the water being everywhere, I think Orange Ocean definitely has some of my favorite levels in the game purely based on the colors used. Like, it's a really pretty world, definitely my favorite one so far. Look at the last level. The colors are literally so cool, it puts you into a nice black and light purple room where you can once again get UFO. Getting to the end of the world, oh shit, we gotta fight Meta Knight, but he's SS tier and I'm at kill percent. The Meta Knight fight, while it's the same in every game it comes up in, it's a pretty cool fight. Meta Knight just refuses to fight you if you don't pick up the sword he left, so he kinda truly is a man of honor. He doesn't have all his moves here since this is his first outing after all, but he's still pretty hard, definitely one of the hardest fights in the game. Oh shit, he's a Kirby too? I'm not sure what that really means for the series, but it's also pretty interesting to see how his mask breaks after every fight. Rainbow Resort is the last world in the game, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't have a reason for being called that. The only reason I can think of is like, if you take the first letter from every world so far and put them in reverse order, it gets you Roji Biv, the colors of the rainbow. This is like, I know the acronym is Roji Biv, but I will stand on the 6 colors of the rainbow being red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. I don't think purple should be replaced with indigo and violet, but according to the game, I'm wrong. This world is probably tied with Vegetable Valley for the easiest world so far. The levels are stupid simple except for the second one, which is the first boss rush of the series. Thankfully, it's pretty short due to being the mini bosses in this game, and not even all of them at that. There's also this room in the third area, which I'm not too fond of because of how weird flying into slopes is in this game. In later Kirby games, you can fly up the momentum of a slope, but if you do it in this game, you're slowed down. In Area 5, there's also this interesting fuse puzzle where you're given 3 options of how to light the fuse: laser, burning, and fire. I think you're supposed to just be able to get the cannon with all 3 abilities, but I just barely got to it with fire, and doing so only got us 5 1-ups. Finally, Area 6 is a blast to the past, well, a blast to 1 year prior. It's completely in monochrome and is a reference to the entirety of Kirby's Dreamland. Green Greens, Castle Laugh Out Loud, Float Islands, Bubbly Clouds, they're all here. You can even do the Kirby secret, and I think this level is pretty cool, especially because you wouldn't expect to see it here. Most of the time, throwbacks to games happen like 20, 10, or even 5 years after it comes out, but 5 is pushing it, so it's cool to see that it's here. Finishing Kirby's Dreamland again, we're brought to the final part of the remake, fighting King Dedede. Dedede is a more fleshed out moveset here, finally including his high jump and tackle move. He still has a lot of health though, so his fight takes a pretty long time. Thanks to the faster pace and the bigger screen real estate of the NES though, it's a little easier to dodge him. So he goes down and we enter, whoa, an 8th world? But there's only supposed to be 7 colors of the rainbow! The Fountain of Dream? The Fountain of Dreams isn't actually a world, it's just labeled as that for the sake of Kirby walking out of the cutscene like a goat. I didn't really talk about the story of this game that much, but it's kinda like this. King Dedede stole the Star Rod and broke it into 7 pieces, each going into the different worlds. And now that we've collected the 7 pieces, the Star Rod is whole again, and Kirby places it into the Fountain of Dreams for us. What Kirby didn't know is that the fountain was currently overrun by Nightmare, not a Nightmare, just Nightmare, who was expelled by the power of the Star Rod. Knowing this, Dedede just decides to fuck us and give us the Star Rod and shoot us into space to fight Nightmare ourselves. This part is really cool. It's a shoot 'em up much like Kabula, but this bitch takes absolutely 0 damage. Something kind of scary to think about is that you can actually run out of time in this fight, so if you don't kill Nightmare in time, you kind of just crash into Planet Popstar and die immediately. I actually didn't notice on my first run, I thought the background was kind of just cool, but I locked in and I got it. Nightmare has a second phase that I also didn't remember, so I had to try fighting Nightmare's second phase on 1 health. I died, of course, but with full health, I'm basically unstoppable. Nightmare goes down, and now there's a big hole in the moon. I'm not sure that's how the crescent moon works, but The ending cutscene just explains that Kirby and Dedede became friends again due to Dedede actually meaning no harm with tampering in the Fountain of Dreams, and he just did so because of the nightmare affecting Dreamland. Wait, say that again? Also, after the credits, the game brings you back to the Fountain of Dreams, where a sign says the end and a copy ability panel just says bye bye, and I think that's adorable. And that's Kirby's Adventure. Out of the two games, I think I definitely enjoy Kirby's Adventure more. I grew up playing both of the games, but I never actually beat Kirby's Adventure until this very run, and I found it to be super nice. The games are really well paced, and playing them back to back made me appreciate them a lot more. I mean, these are the games that began the Kirby series, and for Kirby's first outings, they're amazing. Sakurai basically figured out all the fundamentals of Kirby in his first appearance and just polished them up with copy abilities for the rest, and now, well, Kirby's the way he'll stay for the rest of the series. Well, mostly. Thanks for watching. If I'm able to get this out in time for Christmas, well, Merry Christmas and Happy Early New Year. And if not, I hope you had a good one. You don't have to subscribe if you don't want to, but I definitely recommend sticking around and maybe watching a few videos to make that decision on your own volition. Really quickly, since this will most likely be my last video of 2025, I wanted to thank you guys for sticking around for so long. I feel like my content has been slowly improving since the Cone's Lesson video about 2 years ago, and I just appreciate the fact that some of you guys have been here to watch my steady growth. I really do plan to keep making more videos though, hopefully with smaller gaps like the one between this and the last video. I also kind of find it poetic that my name, MegaKirb, comes from these two franchises, and I'm ending the former half of the decade with the way I started it, since I only really started calling myself MegaKirb 28 this decade. Before that, it was Megaman's Gaming, and before that, well, that's just a story for another time. So until then, see ya!